Today, I'm interviewing Janet Thompson of Janet Thompson's Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine. She specializes in women's health and pediatrics. And what I'm so excited to talk to her about too is she's a working mom. She's the mom of a 15-month-old daughter. Holy moly, right? And her practice is based in Oakland, California. So Janet, I'm so happy you're here. Thanks for taking time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and we talked about this before we sat down really to do this interview today, that the overarching theme is about self-care for working moms, and all moms are working moms, just got to say that straight up. So these interviews that I'm doing with beautiful women like you is around that. That's the overarching theme. So I posed a couple questions to you, and I think the first one was, what was the biggest change for you when you became a mom?
Yeah, thank you. It's funny that you asked that, because actually one of the biggest changes centered around my ability to get self-care, which was we didn't have childcare or any local family support or anything for the first 6 or 7 months. And so anytime I needed something, I had to ask my husband to take time off work. And so I was very aware of the trade-off and his stress levels. And so what I used to get weekly acupuncture for part of my self-care, and that we negotiated to monthly, because he would take time off work in the middle of his day so that he could do the childcare while I was gone. So the biggest change really was just that my time was no longer my own, which I know every parent feels, male or female, to differing degrees. I know it varies in each family, but feeling like my time was no longer my own. And so really having to make tough decisions. Everything I wanted to do for me or for my business was a trade-off with the family. And so it was a whole new level of negotiation.
That's a really, really good point, especially that first year. The first year, holy moly, I'm going to say that a lot, holy moly, when it's your first child, for one, and you don't really know what to expect, right? We go in very innocently, not knowing. You can read all the books you want, and they really don't prepare you for what that's like. So that trade-off had to happen. And I think it's interesting that first year, it certainly does, because they're young and really need you. And then as working moms, how do we begin to shift back into a little bit more volume of time again after those things change? Because that's what I noticed. I stayed in that crazy, hectic, frantic pace, and then it turned into self-neglect. So how have you shifted now that she's a little bit older?
Well, we, let me phrase this with every child is different. So every child, I think one of the biggest things for parents is sleep. I think one of the biggest things in health is sleep. And some parents are interested in sleep training, others are not. Some co-sleep, some don't. So whatever, I have no judgment for however any family wants to work it out for themselves. For us, we decided to do sleep training around 7 months, because her sleep was degrading into sort of 45-minute chunks overnight, and it was demolishing all of us. And we sleep trained, and she began to sleep through the night for sort of 10 and a half, 11 hours a night. And that was a huge turning point. So now she goes to bed 6:30 to 7:30 in the evening. And because she wakes up early in the 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock hour, I go to bed at 8:30 every night. And that is my husband understands that that's my number one priority. He's willing to work around it. He knows that I'm too tired after 7 o'clock for any serious discussion, and that by 8:30 I'm in bed going to sleep, no matter what time we have dinner. If we have dinner at 8:10, I'm still in bed going to sleep at 8:30, because that's what I need. So that's my biggest piece of self-care that I carve out, and it's a non-negotiable in the family.
That's a really, really good point. Sleep is absolutely the most critical piece, for sure. And I can relate to that too. We did sleep training as well. We worked it where we sat in the room, while they were crying, so that they knew you were there. And then you just start to slowly move out of the room. And within a few nights, for us, it took about a week. Yeah. And they were self-soothing, and it was a game changer. Absolutely. Because I was in the same position, and I have two. And so the first one was really good, nursing just fine. Every 3 hours he was nursing, and then, he was relatively good to go to sleep. He'd get up early. The other one, I had no schedule at all. My breasts were like, what the heck? Do I make more? Do I make less? What do I do? Right.
Oh boy.
And I was struggling with mastitis, and, just got so exhausted. And I know all moms know this, that first year especially, I was so exhausted, and I was trying everything. And I even old wives' tale of putting a cabbage leaf.
Cabbage, yeah, oh yeah.
Oh my God. So that just was doing that. And then I was taking lecithin, which actually helped a lot. So that managing that and that non-negotiable, I heard you say that, and that's really important. And it's wonderful that your partner obviously is very much on board with that, very much involved. And, you know, it's interesting now to talk to parents about how things are shifting, how important it is. First of all, I'm a huge advocate of parental leave, right? Mother and father getting time off when they have a baby. Like that just, it seems to be just such a logical thing to do. And yet that's just not what happens in our country, in the United States. Other countries are so much more advanced around that. Yeah. So how did it work for him as it relates to that kind of time?
Yeah, we were very fortunate. His company gives 10 weeks off for paternity. I'm not sure what they give for maternity. I don't know if it's, I hope and imagine it's longer, but for paternity, they give 10 weeks. So he took about 5 weeks to start, and then we saved some time for later on.
Oh, wonderful.
And that was huge. So that allowed us, because I had a C-section, so there was physical recovery. I mean, for every birthing mom, there's physical recovery.
Of course.
But there was the post-surgical exhaustion and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, so that really helped, certainly in the first 2 weeks, just to get grounding. And, you know, you don't know which way's up, especially as a first-time parent. And then to get our systems down. And then we were kind of in a rhythm a bit. So, you know, I wasn't thrilled when he went back to work, but at 5 weeks, it was manageable. We kind of, you know, every day was long, but we knew what we were doing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that cooperation is huge.
Yeah.
You know, not all mothers, you know, sadly, not all mothers get that. You know, you've got a really good relationship in that way in terms of cooperation.
Yeah.
So the managing self-care. So obviously sleep was one. So how are you doing it now that you're about 15 months in? How are you managing self-care for yourself right now?
Yeah, well, so there's a handful of pieces, right? So on the just the physical aspect, you know, it's the sleep is the non-negotiable. My diet I keep in check. I try not to overdo the caffeine. I don't overdo sugar. I try to have whole foods because I know that will bring my energy back postpartum, and just make me feel good overall with lots of veggies and fruits and good healthy food. So that's key. And making, you know, that takes time. I will say one of the other things I was surprised by now that my daughter's eating solid foods is how much time and energy it takes to ensure that the food is always there. It's always fresh. We're not resorting to takeout, you know, because there are a whole list of concerns around all of that. And so really trying to prioritize healthy food for the family takes an immense amount of work and time. So diet and sleep are part of my self-care. I do get appointments for either acupuncture or chiropractic or massage, probably averaging two total per month out of those different modalities. So would I like it weekly? Yes. Can I afford it in terms of budget? Maybe. Can I afford it in terms of time? It's a little bit harder. The other piece I dedicate myself to always is self-improvement. So whether that's therapy or other forms of emotional and spiritual growth. So I do set aside time, not every day, but every week or two, either to work with a practitioner on that or to work on my own around my own self-growth. So those are my pieces of self-care that I'm dedicated to.
I think the mental piece of it is so huge. It's sort of a full court press, isn't it? It's not one thing. It really is a balance of all those pillars of self-care, and that's huge. And I love that you talked about the boundary piece around the non-negotiable. That really is setting a boundary. And I love, you know, as you know, I'm really very much into boundaries are one of the most important pieces for self-care. So I'm happy to hear you saying that. So your time and energy, prepping for food, huge. That's that invisible labor stuff that we talk about a lot, right? We talk about in boundaries, especially bringing those things to light, because sometimes we don't even recognize it. You do. You're going, holy moly, it's taking, see again, here's that holy moly. It's taking so much time to just prep to eat properly. It's no wonder that we fall back on these, you know, on the fast food stuff because we're exhausted. So that just one suggestion on if somebody's in that place where they're just so exhausted, they know that food is an important piece of it, but they just can't say they feel overwhelmed. Like, what's one thing that you could recommend?
I don't think people do it, but asking for help. You know, we all know about the meal train, which hopefully if people participate, you've got meals for the first 3, maybe 4 weeks postpartum. boy, we need that for much longer. And so being able to call a neighbor or friend and saying, we're having a heck of a week. Could you bring us dinner? Could you cook us dinner? Could you cook double of your dinner and just bring some over? Would that be okay? Because A, you need it. You need some solid home cooked food. And B, people love to help. People actually love to be called upon to help. It makes them feel good. It strengthens your interpersonal bond. And you may have a couple, 3 close neighbors or friends, who's currently going through a disaster and they need their own time, and that's fine, but who has a little extra time and space in their schedule to support you. And I would say for a variety of reasons, asking for help from your community, whether it's friends or family, every now and then is a really good way to do it.
That's such a great suggestion. It really is. Even just thinking about some simple stuff, like I wanted to bring more beans into our diet. I love garbanzo beans. So I cook up a huge pot of garbanzo beans, and then I add a little bit of lemon and maybe some herb to them. Yeah. And I just scoop them into some salad. Like even just very simple things, beans and rice. That's such a smart thing. And we can even specify that with people, because we can just say, you can just do something simple for me like that, like cook me up some beans and rice, or, with cheese and things. Yeah. That's a great suggestion. Let me go back to my questions for you, because that's the time and energy piece. And ultimately, when we think about healthy relationships, and you alluded to it, we come into the world, we're super dependent. We need people to care for us. Then we want to, exert our independence. We want to get out there to take care of ourselves. And that's part of growth and maturation. But the ultimate is the interdependence. That's the ultimate form of connection and maturity, is when we can interdependently connect and support each other. That's what it's about. It's community.
Yeah. So, and I also want to acknowledge that a lot of women, we as women often tend to feel shame if we can't do it all ourselves. And there's shame around asking for help. There's shame around admitting, wow, my teenager's having a really tough time and I cannot cope, or, we have this going on, whatever it is. There is no shame. By golly, if you start talking to people about what you're going through, they're going through some version of it too, or they have been, or they will do. So I think it honestly really brings us closer together to admit the areas where we're having help, where we're having hardship, and ask for help, and trying to set that. Some of us have a sort of a more ingrown pattern towards feeling shame, but I think on some level it's there for all of us, and being willing to acknowledge, what, there's no shame in needing help. What, as humans, we're not designed to be doing this alone. We're not designed to live in nuclear families. We're not designed to have, 2 parents working outside of the house all day long, and then somehow magically managing food, being very present with our child, all the childcare needs, all the other physical needs around the house, the emotional needs around the house, and self-care and self-preservation. And oh, by the way, having a delightful and functional marriage. I mean, come on, right? Yes, it makes you laugh out loud, because 3 people, 4 people cannot manage that within the cultural context. And so we all need to be better at asking for help at any age, whether we have young kids, older kids. I think it's
yes. And that the societal construct around motherhood needs to change, and is changing. And that's, I know, one of the biggest things that I'm out there doing is really advocating for this equality, in the way that it's not just women's work. Doing domestic duties are not women's work. Taking care of the kids is not women's work. And I have a lot of clients who talk about this, right? You said the mom shame, the mom guilt, because they have these ideals of perfectionism, and hold on one second, I'm going to toss my phone because it keeps going off. Perfectionism and martyrdom and micromanaging, and these sort of more destructive perspectives. But it's because of society, the pressure on moms to be perfect. To, like, on social media, you're looking like the perfect mom. Your house looks beautiful. Your kitchen, your refrigerator is stacked with all the home cooked stuff that you make.
Yeah, the pretty color labeled.
Right. And it's okay if that's how you want to do it. That's, again, no judgment. It's just, at what is it taking a toll on you? And so when we as mothers and women step up and start to say, you know what, like you said, I need some help. I'm feeling overwhelmed. We talk about how we feel. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling resentful. I'm feeling burdened. I'm feeling, like
exhausted.
Exhausted and disillusioned about it, because a lot of moms will say, I didn't sign up for this. And I read these quotes where it says, you're supposed to work like you're not a mother and mother like you don't work. And so it's time to start dismantling that old paradigm that has existed for a long time. So time and energy, you talked a little bit about that, definitely asking for help. That's, we can never hear that enough, giving ourselves permission to ask for help. And then how do you get some time for yourself? And you kind of answered this around, but just even, how do you just get to just be out there and ponder or daydream? And maybe again, you're still, and your daughter's still young enough that doesn't happen. However, do you get any of that?
Yeah. It's a good question. So part of it, I would say in the, my husband and I sort of have an agreement that after dinner, after everything's tidied up, I go off into the bedroom, I read or watch a little show or something until it's 8:30. That is my quiet time. It's just me in the room. So we do go to bed at different times because that's my sacred time of whether it's 10 minutes or 30, that's my time to sort of be quiet with me. And if I want to escape into a book or TV, cool. If I want to just lie there and kind of reflect on the day, great. So there's a little piece for me of just my own personal quiet time built in during the day. And then I do make a trade-off. So I will block my work schedule. I do have the flexibility of having a self-designed work schedule. So while my daughter's at childcare, if I need to, I will block off times to go take care of appointments or just to create a little bit of open space for decompression.
Got it. Okay, got it. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And you have childcare, so that does give you a little bit more breathing room around your time and energy, which is wonderful. Not every mom does that. And not every mom has partners that are willing to really, again, step in. So let's just pose the question. And I know that this isn't your reality, but what if your partner wasn't as willing to step up? What would you do? And I know this is sort of like throwing this question at you. You didn't get this in the list that I was going to ask.
That's great. Well, I guess the first question is to think of how that manifests, right? So the way. So one thing is my standards would slip. So we are both generally good at picking up after ourselves, taking turns cleaning the dishes, cleaning the baby bottles, all that kind of stuff, going to Costco to get the food. So standards would slip. The house would be a bit of a mess, more of a mess, which I don't love, but hey, it has to be a mess. Like I'd rather be sane and
battles, right?
Have a sloppy house.
Right.
So that's one piece. I'd probably order grocery delivery more often. Rather than doing it myself, because there's just a time limitation, and sometimes you can half watch the kid while being online and ordering stuff if you need to order stuff. So that would be a piece of it. Honestly, we'd probably resort to more pre-prepped food and takeout and that kind of stuff. Because sometimes we do take turns. It's kind of like, who's more tired and who needs a break? The other person will cook dinner. Yeah. I recognize that I'm very fortunate in having that kind of relationship. Yeah. But yeah, it would be a lot more takeout food, which I don't love to do because, one of the hidden things out there are environmental toxins in most of the takeout containers that we get. They're the grease-proof coatings are, they leave the body in 2 or 3 days, but the overall toxic load is pretty high. So we try to avoid doing too much takeout for that reason, and it's important for our child too. But would I let that slip? Yeah, I might have to.
Right. What I wanted to, and I want to share this book, and I'm sharing this with all the interviews I'm doing. It's called Fair Play, because what Janet is saying is you're still speaking as if you and your partner are kind of in agreement and working together. So if you're a mom that has a partner that's sort of giving you pushback around stepping up and actually doing these things, this book, Fair Play by Rodsky, is a really great book. I had to be careful when I started reading it because I got you get a little bit angry because you're looking at the way society, how unfair it is in the ways that moms take on so much, the mother load, the invisible load, the default parent. There's all kinds of terms out there for it. So if you are a mom that is needing to have some conversations, not only do I support you with boundary courses, and I can put that in the copy down below, but I also really recommend this book because she goes into great detail about how this has happened, how it's starting to shift in society. And it's the woman and mother's role to step up and actually start to speak up for herself and say, I'm no longer willing to do this. I want this to be divided equally. Domestic chores are a family responsibility and not just mine, and start to dismantle that old mindset. So I'm going to put the information on this book in the copy.
Great.
Okay, wonderful. You gave me a really great synopsis of what's happening now, this first 15 months of life with your new sweet daughter and your husband. How, in your practice, I'd love to talk just for a little bit about your practice. I know you specialize in women's health and pediatrics. So take me there as it relates to self-care.
Yeah, so I would say it's the lack of self-care shows up most when I have pediatric patients. Often by the time kids and their families make it to acupuncture, it's sort of a last resort or other things aren't working. And so here we are, by which point the parents are, if it's behavioral issues of some variety, usually the parents are incredibly drained, incredibly frustrated, and have kind of no ability to emotionally regulate anymore because they're so drained and frustrated. And so I see these parents coming in who are at the end of their rope. They're not able to manage themselves, which then the children aren't seeing a model of sort of calm behavior, and B, it's rattling the children even more. So I do have to have conversations with my families around, we're going to get help for your child, whether it's a digestive concern or it's skin or it's infections or it's behavioral, ADHD, autism spectrum, all that kind of stuff. But the parents, when sometimes they come in and they're smooth as butter and they've read all the emotional regulation books and they're doing a great job, and other times they're just, oh goodness, so stressed out, so worried, so unable to just really function, that I do have to talk to them about how they're getting their self-care and helping them see that there's such a strong connection between parent and child, especially before teen years. I mean, teen years are incredibly important too, but before the child has, as we talked about before, individuated a little bit, the child and the parents are such a tight unit that everything really goes back and forth. And so when the kid gets riled, understandably, the parent gets riled. You don't want to see your child suffering. It's so hard. And yet you have to do the self-work and get the self-care to bring it down, even if you're bringing yourself down from a 10 to a 6 and not like a happy, I'm all good, 2 level or something. Even if you're just taking it from emergency level to like medium level stress and anxiety, that's a huge improvement for your child. And so those are the conversations I try to have, and whether it's encouraging parents to, take herbs or do acupuncture or go get a massage or schedule an hour of free you time or whatever it is, that will help them regain their balance. And I tell them because, parents are often very selfless. And so it's saying, even if you can't do this for you, please do it for your child, because it will help your child. And that angle is usually, effective.
Definitely. No, that's such a, I'm so happy you're having that conversation, because you and I, we talk a lot about, we're kind of sort of neuroscience geeks around stuff like that. And we understand that the nervous system imprints, it does for anybody really, right? You and I are in a room together, our nervous systems are going to imprint on each other. And it's particularly strong, obviously, in the family dynamic. We've got those mirror neurons. A child is reflecting and learning based on the way that you're engaging with them and the way that your nervous system is set up. So absolutely. And in our society right now, everybody's just so bloody stressed, and, not even to mention piling COVID on top of it. So it's that, I hate this analogy, but it makes the most sense. It's, again, on the airplane, you got to put the mask on first before you can help anybody else. And from a nervous system perspective, that's so powerful. Okay, so you have those conversations with parents, and then you work to support the child. And I know that your work is amazing. I obviously have used you several times for a variety of different things in my life. Some of it just keeping my nervous system in a healthy place, and then some acute stuff that's happened. And you've also helped my teenage sons. So what else? What are some of the suggestions that you can give? Obviously, getting some acupuncture if people are willing to do that. What else? Herbs, things like that. Like, what other suggestions do you have?
Yeah. For me, as we mentioned before, sleep is the utmost. And my heart goes out to parents. I mean, I know there are some families where the child just cannot sleep. There's whatever kinds of issues going on, whether it's a phase or a long-term thing. So, I want to say that I where it's possible for the parent to sleep and get a long enough night of sleep, that for me is the top priority. And, Chinese medicine has a number of herbs that help with insomnia. Western medicine has a number of herbs that help with insomnia. So getting support if insomnia is one piece of it is really huge. Because that affects our mood, it affects how we eat, how we eat then affects our mood and how we feel in our bodies. So it's all tied together. So for me, getting parents sleep is the number one piece. And we all know if you get a good night of sleep, you're less likely to get irritable with your spouse and your children and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Your nerves are calm. Right. Exactly. Your nerves are calmed down. And I love that when you talk about herbs, and I've definitely experienced the herbs that you've talked about, it really does. It's so interesting to notice the difference one day if you're really stressed out and how you're just on edge, right? You've just got, you're fraying that one last nerve that you've got, versus when you're really taking care of yourself and your system is more calm, the things that would normally irritate the crap out of you, you're like, oh, okay, whatever. My kids are like, wait, what? You're not going to get mad at me over that?
Oh, yeah. And then, if you are one of those families where sleep is impossible for a variety of reasons, it's the rescue stuff. So it's rescue breaths. So one of my favorites, Dr. Andrew Weil has a breathwork pattern where I'm not going to remember it. It's breathe in. I think I may be getting this wrong. I think it's breathe in 4, hold for 6, and breathe out for 8. There are a bunch of different patterns you can find, but essentially breathing, holding a little longer, and breathing out even longer helps to calm the body. If you do it 1 minute at a time, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, if that's all you can manage, that will make a huge difference in your nervous system.
Right.
There's certainly rescue attempts, whether it's rescue through breath work, rescue through stepping outside for a short bit to get some sun and nature therapy, even if it's just outside your office or your home and then back inside.
Yep.
And then I always love herbs because I think they're very powerful in helping the nervous system reset.
I want to come back to the herbs in a minute, and I want to just reflect on the breath, right? The mind follows the breath and the breath follows the mind. And you're absolutely right, because when we're hyperventilating or holding our breath, then the body goes into that stress, that sympathetic nervous system. So to be able to breathe and calm it down, and that exhale, you're right, that activates the vagus nerve, which helps the body to come back. The other thing that I like too is you can do a little cold therapy. I like cold showers. That definitely resets my system, but you can, I know
they're supposed to be good. I have a tough time with that.
It took a while. Believe me, it took a while. But once I got into it, I don't start cold. I do my normal temperature, and then I start to cool it off towards the end. And it's easier in the summertime because it's so hot outside. So once you get your system accustomed to it, and clearly you have to be in the right health, so talk to your doctor if you do any kind of cold therapy. But even just putting an ice pack on your neck, which then starts to tone the vagus nerve, starts to calm the system down, or cold water on your face, that will also reset the nervous system. So those are some great suggestions for anybody that feels really, that's in that kind of space. And again, like you said, being a parent early on with kids, or dealing with kids that are having some health challenges, it's so scary. So I'm so happy you're helping. Now, herbs, when people come into your practice, clearly you can do it. But I also know that during the pandemic, you were doing some online consulting, right?
Yeah, it's really my preference to see people in person.
Yes. Okay.
So, yes, that was basically an emergency phase of doing some remote work.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. And again, your practice is in Oakland, California. So anybody who's in the Bay Area can see Janet. Wonderful. Well, I feel like we've talked a little bit about what it's like to be a mama and a parent. And again, there's no blame here. I'm just specializing in working moms. And so all parents, again, go through stress. And the biggest thing that I know that we would want for you is to be able to communicate, to have a good, healthy, cooperation with between the two of you as you're managing kids. And if you're a single parent, oh my gosh, kind of like what Janet said, please, please, please give yourself permission to ask for help. People are wanting to, they're kind of biting at the bit to help because they know, they understand. More people understand the kind of challenges you face than you realize. Yes. So please ask for help. And if you are in the area, definitely see Janet. We just wanted to provide you with some love and some support and some inspiration, and want you to know that you're not alone and that we're here to help you. And Janet, is there anything else that you want to throw in before we sort of close this out?
Mostly that, parenting is not easy for anyone, no matter what they tell you. So that's for sure, for sure. Parenting is not easy. It just depends how hard it is on any given day. And being a woman with all the cultural constructs we're dealing with and some of the rights issues that are going on right now is very challenging. And the current political climate can create an additional level of insecurity, fear, and stress for women. And so just to acknowledge that, women really have a lot going on right now. And I think community, like what you're creating with your programs and resources for help, are huge. So ask for help from your lady friends. Try to find communities with your lady friends. And absolutely, Lorie, I love the work that you're doing. And I know the boundaries work is huge. I certainly continue to refer people to you because that is hugely important. So I would say just stay tuned to Lorie's page for more courses as they come up, because you're on the cutting edge of supporting moms, and it's really huge.
Oh, I'm feeling like I'm really hitting my stride with it, because you know how long it's taken me to kind of get this going. And the last thing I want to say is that all moms are working moms, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or a more traditional working mom. And there's, when I go into Reddit and Quorum, I see that there's a little bit of back and forth between moms around this, who's right, who's wrong. And I just want to really plead with you that we're all in it together. And no matter whose situation and what choices we've made, whether it's to stay home or whether it's to go back to work, those are personal choices. And that no matter what, I want us to stick together. Remember that interdependence that I talked about. So Janet, I feel like we are just so interdependently connected, and I'm so blessed to know you, my friend. And I'm so excited that you're doing the work that you're doing, because you really come at it with a beautiful, big, open heart, and that is so healing for so many. So thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it, and more to come, because you have so much to offer. So I think we're gonna do a series of interviews with this. So thanks for watching here. Again, look down below with all the information that we talked about, whether it's Janet's information or my information about the boundary courses. And then of course, to get the book that I recommended, Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.